Hello and welcome. Apologies, I'm kind of new here, back into YouTube, but I wanted to share in my passion for MGM's From. In front of you, if you have watched From and you are caught up with From Season 4, you've probably seen this photo before, or you remember the scene where Victor's in the cave and we see all these symbols on the wall. Um, at the time, we don't really have time in the episode to see really what these are, and I think across the few seasons and the years we have From, we haven't really taken too much of time to explore exactly what these symbols mean. Now, obviously, we have a lot of symbols around the children and the children looking horrified with their arms out, and blood, what looks like to be blood in the wall, and obviously a lot of people speculated that the centerpiece that Victor is looking at with the red coming down is actually the corpse, or the carcass rather, of the smiley creature when it was birthed by Fatima. I have a slightly different theory on this, or maybe a sort of sidestep to that being the case, which I'll mention later. Obviously, in the middle you have Jade's symbol. Obviously, there's a lot of theories to have around the symbol, but obviously in the universe of From, we know that the children are going to be sacrificed, and someone that loved them told them a story, and they gained hope, and they poured that hope essence into the roots of the tree, and we assume that grew the forest, which is Fromville. Keep on that sort of subject of energy and pouring that energy into the roots. My idea for this video is going to be based around Germanic runes, some of the Germanic runes that we see in this on this cave. Now, specifically, I want to talk about what's referred to as Elder Futhark runes. These are ancient Germanic runes that essentially have their own alphabet. So that's really the premise of this video. How do the symbols that we see on the cave paintings, how does that relate to our story of From, and is there any insight to be gained there?
You want me to plan a suicide mission because of some things that you saw in a mushroom trip.
I was surprised that this wasn't revisited, in Jade's mushroom trip that we've just seen in the last episode. I thought that this might be, one of those, easy grabs for the writers and the directors of the show, that, this cave painting would come alive and tell a story, but, alas, we don't have that just yet. Now, obviously, in Jade's mushroom trip, we do again get reference to the fact that music is the universal language in this place. We've heard it before in the series. We've literally got all of the different reincarnated Jades standing outside Colony House and reminding us that music is important and frequency is important. Remember, we're seeing the frequency of the radio, the jukebox in the diner. All of these things seem to be connected to that forest and to that energy that we mentioned earlier. And why the forest specifically, again, we'll come to that, but I think energy and manifestation in this place, obviously, I'm not the first person to say that, but energy and manifestation is huge as to what creates the embodiment of possibly the entity itself that seems to control this place, but definitely the place itself. Even in the last episode, we're seeing manifestations of people's fears, their nightmares, literally coming to life. In previous seasons, we've seen Sarah refer to the cicadas that literally were spawned from Nathan's nightmares. Again, that in one fell swoop sort of confirms two things: that we are right, this place manifests our fear, but also that Nathan was dead at that point of the series. So we have to remember that again. The scientific rule taught to us by Jade, that energy cannot be destroyed; it just transfers to from one state to another. So essentially, we are again being told that, look, these people are tuning into, or this place is tuning into these people's fears, but also when they die, they seem to still exist, and I wonder if they exist in that lake of tears, but I guess that's probably one for another video. Now, when we look at the specific Elder Futhark runes that I mentioned, we have a full spread of the alphabet. Again, I've done a bit of research as to what exactly these symbols refer to in terms of mythology, and obviously mythology is huge in From. We have Fatima in the season literally telling us that all religious mythology, or any kind of mythology, can all be combined together to tell a story. So it's almost a nod from the writers that say, like, look at all mythology. We're not locked into Germanic, but I think whilst we acknowledge that music is the universal language of From, we're also literally presented with writings on these caves. So when we look at the cave, what sticks out to me is this prominent I would refer to it as an F symbol, but obviously it's not an F. We have a few more prongs coming out of it. To me, I immediately looked at, what is this symbol? So this F is going to refer to Fehu. Again, I'm going to butcher these names, so let's just run past it. So Fehu is literally referring to cattle in Germanic and Norse societies. So essentially, those early sort of Northern European, Scandinavian population, they would have represented that with the symbol for cattle, which is in relation to our story in From is extremely significant. That it seems that this place is churning out people generation after generation and locking them in these loops, and we literally have livestock that they're allowed to keep. Maybe a mirror image of the fact that the people themselves are actually livestock for the creatures, but probably more likely the man in yellow, or whatever higher entity is feeding off this place. So Fehu literally means cattle. The R, obviously we don't get actually any individual further symbols within the script on the cave painting, but obviously we have the F. It matches perfectly, to me anyway. It's enough. So essentially, I wanted then to look at the further script and in relation to what I'm seeing. So that's where I want to redirect your attention to our symbol in the center of the screen. So to me, this that I've highlighted does kind of represent what I'm looking at with that F symbol for Fehu. What I'm looking at here, though, is kind of an indication that the show's name itself, From. I wanted to tie this together with the symbol because I think obviously there's an intentional reason this name is chosen, but when we look at it in terms of its equivalency in the Elder Futhark script, we are looking at FROM. We're doing Fehu. R in the script would be Righto. Again, I'm going to butcher this. Righto. Then we have O, which would be our Othala. And then we have our M, which is Manaz. So, similar to Fehu, obviously Fehu means cattle. R in this significance, in this, in reference to this mythology, would be a journey. And in that sort of sense of a journey, I want to bring you back to the symbol and look at this, where I've highlighted that looks to be a flipped version of the R on this script. I again, I might be reaching, but I think that idea of a journey, a transition from one place to another, and the fact that it's actually flipped is actually a very apt analogy for From in general, and that finding the log in the middle of the road and sort of going into this place where you can drive and you can go in any direction and always come back to town. So moving on, I think the O, Othala, it actually refers to like inherited ancestral homeland, which kind of speaks to the ancient inhabitants and the probably hundreds of generations, or ancient generations of communities that were obviously all wiped out and massacred. We have to assume, as we are told in the last episode, that the jades that we see in front of Colony House, they are only some of many more. So when we're talking about inherited land, it speaks to that ancient sort of presence that's always been there, and the sort of time frame that this place has existed for. When we talk about this O symbol in relation to the symbol in the cave, I think we have to look at the obvious in the center of the symbol, where we have a little bit of an O there. Obviously, again, this is all of a bit of a reach, but I think if we're trying to, talk about what this symbol means, obviously we have Ankui, which is what we keep being told to remember, but what are we remembering? I think the symbol is almost trying to embody everything that we're trying to remember about these previous generations and how, the ancient secrets that we've lost in this place. So if we can imagine that O is in the center, we have two options. We have the just normal O symbol, and then we have one O symbol that is held up by two lines. I think both apply really, because you have that O in the center and you have these two sort of extended lines. To me, that's enough. I think that works in terms of what I'm trying to tell you guys here. When we're talking about Manaz, I think you can really see some of the symbolism that I'm trying to invoke to you guys here, where we can see the lines coming down. Again, we can use that for the F symbol when we look we shift our perspective one way. When we shift our head the other way, we can see the three lines coming down. We obviously have one that is sort of bent in the wrong way, and I think when we talk about M, obviously that symbol again referred to mankind and the self. So again, for one of those representations of the self to be bent and out of shape, I think that is a sort of a nod to the fact that this place will warp and twist the mankind out of people, to where they would act in ways that they wouldn't have done before they arrived. So again, that tracks in terms of From. So really what this symbol tells me, if we follow down the root of this Germanic sort of lore and mythology, obviously the children poured their hopes and dreams and everything positive into the roots of the tree, and the tree gave birth to, we assume, the entire forest eventually. And essentially what this symbol that Jade is seeing is the From universe telling him, if we're talking Germanic, it's literally telling him Fehu, Raidho, Othala, Manaz, but we take that as cattle on a journey that's been warped or flipped, and that cattle is on ancient inherited land, and it twists the mankind out of them. I mean, that's From. I think that is why the show is called From. I think, to me, that is a perfect, apt way to describe the whole setting and the universe. So I'd love to know your opinions and what this sort of means to you. And what I nearly forgot to draw back to was the symbol in front of Victor, directly in front of him, where people speculate this is the carcass of what Smiley was birthed in. We can shift our thinking on this if we want to, look at these Germanic runes and look at the script. Again, obviously our M from Manaz, referencing humanity. If we are to believe this is what the writers want us to sort of think about, obviously that symbol could be read as an M to me in a way, which could be in relation to the fact that these monsters were in fact once people, and that humanity has been twisted. So yeah, I think all of this is important. I think the fact that the symbols were born from seemingly the hope and the energy put in by the children, I think is super important. I think the fact that people have nightmares and this energy of the nightmare seems to linger even after they die is super important. And I think the Lake of Tears might be the sort of repository where all of these sort of souls and aspects about people that these entities and creatures draw from, where they get the energy in relation and all the information about these people's lives. I think that's where we're kind of going. But yeah, let me know your opinion, and I hopefully will do another one of these videos if it gets good reception. So let me know what you think, and I will see you soon. Bye.